Joining me now on the drive, it's Jayson Timpf of the Hoops Tonight podcast. Avid Lakers fans, we're going to poke some fun there. NBA Finals, let's talk it all. Jayson, good morning, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I can't complain. I'm hoping that Dallas can make us a series tomorrow, though.
We're all kind of hoping for that. But you yourself, we just talked about it a second ago. You can see the finish line. It's been such a long season. Does it drive you a little insane that the scheduling of this series is 2 games off? I mean, if there's a game 7, what could it potentially be? June 21st or something ridiculous? Like, at some point, the season's got to end.
23rd.
Okay, 23rd. So awesome. So we can tell our wives, like I was telling you off the air, that we'll be back in a couple of weeks, and hopefully they're still there for us.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because this cadence during the NBA Finals is actually by far the easiest part of my playoff schedule because, like, I do a film session for every game, and then I do an instant reaction for every game. So during the conference finals, it's still like I'm working twice a day. Like, there's a game every other night, and then I'm reacting that night and then doing a film session the next morning. The finals cadence is nice because, like, I'll react that night. I'll do a film session the next day. We'll do a mailbag the following day or an interview or something. So I'm only going once a day, and I'm only going at night, like every third night. So it's definitely nice, but it's weird because then you get, like, lulled into this relaxing, like, oh, it's summertime, but then all of a sudden it's like, wait, it's game 3 of the finals tomorrow. Like, you know, like it's kind of a weird vibe with how intense the basketball games are. But again, like, yeah, like 2 weeks, I think the series is going to be over sooner than later. So
oh, wow.
about a week from today, I think we're going to finally be out of the forest here.
You know, before we get really into the weeds in the NBA Finals, you're a Los Angeles Lakers fan. I don't mean to rub it in too much. Maybe you didn't even really want Dan Hurley, but what's your reaction to, before we get into anything else, Dan Hurley rejecting your beloved Los Angeles Lakers yesterday? Were you surprised? I mean, what was your reaction?
Oh, man, I absolutely wanted Dan Hurley. I thought he would have been perfect. I thought he was the perfect kind of bridge coach for what the Lakers needed right now, which was someone that could help them make use of kind of a funky roster. Dan Hurley is a specialist at creating space with non-shooters on the floor. And with the Lakers team that has Anthony Davis and Jared Vanderbilt and some other guys that are, you know, inconsistent shooters, I thought that he'd be able to work wonders with them. Specifically, he's a master at off-ball action that occupies help defenders, even though some of the guys involved aren't necessarily, you know, just spotting up the way that they do for the Dallas Mavericks, if that makes sense. And so I thought it was a great fit. And then post LeBron, you've got a program builder, a guy who specializes in player development. I thought it would be great. But at the same time, like, I think some of the talk after is that the Lakers just were used for leverage. I don't agree with that. I think that Dan Hurley really considered it. I think, like, to put it simply, like, if someone calls and asks you if you want to coach the Dallas Cowboys, you're going to listen. If someone calls and asks you if you want to manage the New York Yankees, you're going to listen. Like, I think that job carries enough prestige that he took it seriously. It's you know, but we talked about this before with our wives, man. Like, if I got a phone, my wife and I we're 5 minutes away from both of our parents. Like, if I wanted to move to Los Angeles to pursue some job in sports media, you don't think my wife has a say in that? Like, this stuff is complicated. You've got ties. I mean, for them, I mean, we're talking literally about crossing the entire country. So I get it. It makes sense to me why he's staying. I think a big part of it too is familiarity. Like, he's really good at what he does right now, where he's at, and he didn't want to tweak that. So I think he gave it a good, honest thought, and I think he chose another direction, and now the Lakers are going to have to pivot.
Yeah, so is there a certain level of animosity towards Jeanie Buss? There was a report out there, potentially $100 million that could be given at Dan Hurley. Is there a little bit of resentment towards Jeanie Buss where it comes out that it kind of feels like they lowballed Dan Hurley, that if they could have gotten Dan Hurley if they really wanted to, because $100 million and $70 million is $30 million difference. Is that the difference between getting Dan Hurley and not? And at some point, is there a resentment towards Jeanie Buss for that?
Yeah, I started to get worried during the Game 2 post-game show with Colin Cowherd when he was saying to me that he had been hearing much smaller numbers. And then I was like, uh-oh, because that was Sunday night and the decision was coming out on Monday. And when I heard that, I was like, okay, like this is an issue because you really got to financially incentivize someone to make that type of move. And especially when you factor in just how expensive the state of California is to live, And as far as the Jeannie Buss thing goes, like, I think that's an important part that extends even beyond the money towards the other reasons you'd have to consider before you take a job like that. Like, this is one of the least rich owners in the NBA. She's not even a billionaire. She had to let Alex Caruso walk, an incredibly valuable NBA role player. She had to let him walk basically over a luxury tax payment that would have amounted to about $20 million. It's like, yeah, it's a lot of money, but like Steve Ballmer's cutting that check, like Mark Cuban, when he was fully in control of the Mavericks, was cutting that check, when you have the money, you just have more flexibility to be more aggressive with roster building. And I think that was probably something that got factored in. As far as it pertains to Dan Hurley and his offer, it's so foolish to me because the market for NBA head coaches is right around that mark. Budenholzer just got $10 million a year for 5 years. Like, Budenholzer is kind of regarded as a very vanilla NBA coach, like one that isn't very, creative and is bad with adjustments and kind of stubborn. Like, he's a guy that's regarded as a flawed NBA head coach, and he got $50 million for 5 years. So, like, at a certain point, especially in the grand scheme of the new TV deal and just how much money goes into running an NBA franchise, like, I cannot believe that they didn't throw this guy $16 million a year to try to close the deal. Like, it just seems like a missed opportunity. But at the end of the day, like, Lakers fans are used to it, man. Like, we've seen them let Julius Randle go, let Brook Lopez go, let all these guys go. It's just kind of par for the course.
Do you think, to tie this all together before we jump right into the NBA Finals, for Suns fans that, think that there's at least a slight possibility, maybe it's 1%, LeBron James could be here for the vet minimum. Do you think that this affects whether it's the Suns getting LeBron for a vet minimum, which does sound outlandish when you just say it out loud, or LeBron going anywhere? Do you think this affects LeBron's mobility, whether it's the Suns, whether it's the Sixers, or do you think it's just, like you said, par for the course? He's going to stick it out with the Lakers no matter what. He's going to get his guy, J.J. Redick. Or do you think this changes anything?
You know what's interesting? I thought Dan Hurley getting the job might have made it a little bit more likely that LeBron would leave. And the main reason why is, like, so if Dan Hurley had signed like a 6-year deal, don't you think that he would have gone into that front office and then when the draft night came around and they're like, hey, so we can flip 2 first-round picks for DeJounte Murray and then we could do this and we could do that. Don't you think that Dan Hurley would have been the guy in the room that's like, no, keep all those picks. Like, we need them. We need them. Point. We need them for the future. We need them for, to build this program out. And like, I think that between that and just in general, just kind of more of an eye towards the future, I think LeBron might have been more willing to look elsewhere. But I think without Dan Hurley, it's going to turn into more of like a short-term kind of plan. And I'm personally hoping for JJ. I think he's super competitive.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think to me, it's like really simple. Why would you quit doing what we do for a living to go coach an NBA team? Like, that sounds like a terrible idea. So, like, but he's doing it because he's crazy. He's doing it because he's super competitive. He's a smart guy. He's going to go into that locker room, and he's just going to take the challenge, so to speak. As far as the personality dynamics, they're complicated, yes. But if I've got a year 22 LeBron to kind of smooth that process over for a couple of seasons, I actually think that makes it more likely that Redick learns on the job and learns well. So, like, I think the JJ Redick thing could work. Most of these, like Borrego is not someone that's particularly interesting to me. Anytime you hire an NBA assistant, like one of these guys like Mike Nori or Adelman out of Denver, like, it always just ends up being risky anyway, because you know how it is. Like, just because you were a successful assistant doesn't mean you're going to be a great head coach. So, like, there's risk involved across the board. I don't like when people act like it's just like a straightforward thing. I mean, even with Mike Budenholzer, who's a safe choice, like, I think that was a like a higher floor, lower ceiling type of decision, like there's always a certain amount of risk. But what you're betting on is you're betting on the players being able to figure it out. Like get an experienced coach in there, KD, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. These guys will figure it out. So there's risk no matter what you do. But I like risk with veteran players like that a little bit more than the opposite.
Let's pivot to the NBA Finals here a little bit. I have been known as a Jayson Tatum skeptic. I don't think he's a top 5 guy. There's a few other guys I'd build my franchise around before Jayson Tatum. For a lot of the reasons that is just like settles for a lot of pull-up jump shots, doesn't feel like he has a lot of alpha for him. Am I being too hard on Jayson Tatum? Game 7 last year, outplayed by Caleb Martin. 2022 NBA Finals, was not the best player on his own team. Not the best player on his own team in this year's Finals. Are we all being a little too hard on Jayson Tatum? Or should we all prop the guy up for averaging 17 points and 10 rebounds and some decent playmaking? Or is there real skepticism to Jayson Tatum? What's your take?
It's so funny. This Tatum thing, it's like both sides are arguing different points. Like all the Celtics fans are arguing, like, look at all of this other stuff he's doing, because he's in just a miserable shooting slump. Like his jump shot has been worth about 0.82 points per jumper in this postseason, which is the third consecutive postseason where it's declined from the previous postseason. He was up over 1 point per jump shot in that 2022 season when they went all the way to the finals. And so, like, he's just in this miserable shooting slump, which is making him look worse than he actually is. But he's never been a great, consistent jump shooter, right? So, like, some of that is part of his game. I think that's making it look worse than it actually is. But, like, Celtics fans are like, look at all this other stuff he's doing. And then non-Celtics fans are like, he's not a top-tier superstar. And both of those things are true. Like, is Jayson Tatum like Nikola Jokic? No. You'd be foolish to think so. Is he like Luka Doncic? Is he like Giannis? No, he's not on that level with those guys. He's in the group below that. But he's also doing a lot of really good things. In this series, him being able, with his size and strength, to match up at the center position with Lively and Gafford is the primary chess piece that is messing up Dallas's offense. To put it simply, when Dallas is functioning, they have shooters in the corners, shooter on the opposite wing, Lively or Gafford comes up and sets the ball screen for Luka. They both drive and roll into a vacant paint together. Then if someone helps out of the corner, that's where they get their corner threes, right? But because Tatum is on the center and he can just switch on ball screens, Lively and Gafford are parked in the dunker spot, which means Tatum is parked directly under the basket. And now it's Derek Jones who's setting the ball screen primarily to try to get Porzingis into the action or to try to get Horford into the action. And when they do that, Horford is just switching onto Luka and guarding well. Porzingis, they're being a little bit more aggressive in like a high drop coverage. But Derek Jones, if he rolls, he's rolling right into Tatum. If he pops, he's not a great above the break 3-point shooter. So like literally Tatum guarding the center and that just fundamentally altering the geometry, the way Dallas attacks is the main thing that's messing up their offense. And then on the other end of the floor, him and Jaylen Brown are just picking on these entry points, mainly Luka, but also Kyrie, also Daniel Gafford. Maxi Kleber is a guy they're growing at as well. A little bit of Josh Green in the post. Like they're just finding that guy and attacking. And Tatum has done a good job of making reads out of drawing multiple defenders. So, yeah, he's doing great. He's doing great in a smaller role that is just not the same as what Nikola Jokic did for the Nuggets last year. And if you say that, Celtics fans get upset, but it's just the truth. I don't think anybody outside of that fan base has any sort of impression that Tatum's on that level.
Well, I have a million other questions. We're running out of time here. So, Jayson Timpf, Hoops Tonight, the Volume Podcast Network. We'll be watching. We'll be following. Jayson, thanks for joining me, man. We really appreciate your time. And hopefully we can get you back on before the NBA Finals ends and the wife takes you back over full-time like she should obviously do. But we really appreciate it, man. Thanks for joining me.
This was fun, Ben. Looking forward to next time, man.
Yes, sir. That's Jayson Timpf, Hoops Tonight.